European Union. This is ridiculous. We should put them together. And then, if we really create a common state, then we can do lots of things with a common budget and so on, as the Americans do, which has automatic stabilizers and transfers to a limited extent. But we should not do that prematurely, in particular not through this investment fund of Juncker's. I think this is that's an attempt to circumvent the deficit rules. It's a shadow budget of the kind which we were complaining the banks were building up in Luxembourg, in Ireland and elsewhere. The government, in the end, cannot decide which private projects are worth carrying out and which not. Here we may have different opinions. So, the Juncker Fund is a big co-financing operation where the decisions of the markets are changed through political will, and this is ultimately investment steering. I think that should not be done, and the ECB should not be involved in buying the bonds of this Juncker Fund as it will. The decision of QE was that 20% of the funds will be used for such purposes. That is not in line with the mandate of the ECB, and it is circumventing Article 125, which forbids state finance with the printing press. We don't take the treaty serious anymore, but I find this terrible. We should change the treaty if we want to do it differently. But we should not, under the carpet, so to say, in an invisible way, do all sorts of ugly things which are in fact forbidden.
Okay, we now should give the audience the chance to comment and to ask. One last question from my side. Could you please tell us a little bit about your mistakes? I mean, you told us about your frustration, and you told us about this terrible European processes and so on, and we have very strong opinion, as we have heard today. But what did you wrong? What did you make wrong?
How many hours do you have?
Let's say 3 points.
Okay. Firstly, as Larry Summers said to me, Larry Summers, the former US Treasury Secretary, said, Yanis, you made a very big mistake. First time we went, I said, what? You won the election. No, that's a joke. But it's true. She said that. You won the election. It was a big mistake.
The election or the referendum?
No, the election, that was in January. But the serious story there is because we were not prepared for it, because we thought that the government would survive another year at least. So it is true that our proposals, our anti-memorandum or alternative memorandum, had not taken shape. I wish that I had walked into the ministry with that document ready. The election, the general election caught us by surprise, me by surprise. So it was a race against time to prepare our proposals. They were ready very quickly by comparison, but I wish they were ready a month before. That's one mistake. The second mistake was that I did not publicize them, these proposals, in good time. The reason why I didn't publicize them was because I was threatened. If I publicized them, they would never be taken seriously. In the end, they were not taken seriously. So I shouldn't publicize them so that, instead of having all these leaks that we didn't have proposals, that our document would be there on the table and people would then have to comment on it. There is a very curious situation in the Euro where you're told that, and this is something maybe somebody here can enlighten me as to why this is. I was told that if we made public, or even if we dared email to the other finance ministers our proposals, then that would be casus belli, I was told, especially in this country, because the finance ministry would have to table our proposals with the Bundestag, which I don't think is such a great disaster anyway. opinions about this and that will destroy the process of negotiation. I wish I had not listened to them and I had published them. Because then you could read them while the negotiations were happening and have your opinion, and then you would have good reasons to be critical of me and my ministry. But at least there would be some substantial discussion about the mistakes. The third mistake, big mistake, this one, was that I signed the application for the loan extension at the end of February. On the 20th of February, there was a European meeting which actually went very well, because we established a very sensible common ground between the institutions and our government and finance ministers. We agreed that we have a new government in Greece, there is an existing program, and we would make some proposals that would keep a substantial part, I can quantify it by saying 70% of the existing program, and replace the remaining with our proposals, and the institutions as judgment on this. And my understanding was that this would be the new basis for passing judgment on our government. And that's why I came out on the 20th of February in a celebratory mood. I thought this was a major breakthrough for all of us with regard to this. 3 days later, the representatives of the institutions in a teleconference said to me, yes, this is fine, we agree with this, except the previous MOU stands as it is. Which is, for me, it was preposterous. What was the whole point of replacing parts of it and creating a new list if they were to be just the basic of the old list? And still I signed because I didn't want a clash with the Eurogroup at that point, and I wanted to win these 4 months during which hopefully we would come to a sensible agreement. It didn't happen because those 4 months were not a period during which the Troika wanted to negotiate. They were simply interested in waiting for us to fall on our knees due to liquidity problems and effectively to go back to the previous MOU. In the end, we went back to the even worse MOU. That was enough. I can keep going on with this.
If you could give a prize for the gangster in the game, the most worst party in the game, was it the ECB, was it the Commission, was it the German government? Was it your home?
I'm not going to go into this particular, because you know what? The worst part was the frustration I felt of not being able to sit down and have a genuine discussion about a program that would stabilize the Greek debt, would stabilize the Greek economy, which would be good for Europeans. I did mention before that I didn't know who to talk to. It wasn't the IMF, because there were people in the IMF with whom I saw eye to eye. There were other people in the IMF who were then sent over. Let me give you just one example, right? Just one example. And I won't mention names. This has to do with the IMF. There was the IMF constantly, on one of the issues that was important to them, they were harassing me, they were pressurizing me to reduce the number of VAT rates from 3, with some exemptions for islands, to 2, with no exemptions for islands. That was a standard line by the IMF. They believed that the fewer categories there are VAT rates, the better, because it prevents arbitrage and so on. I kept saying to them that this was not a problem in Greece. The problem was that people didn't pay their VAT. And I gave the example of Mykonos, you're familiar with that beautiful island, and Santorini, where in 2014, tourist arrivals doubled and the VAT take went down by 30%. I said, look, this is not a question of rates, this is a question of enforcement. It's a question of the social contract between the state and the people of Greece and the vendors and so on and so forth. Help us dealing with the problem of enforcement. Even I'm a left-winger, and I was recommending a Laffer curve-like argument that should reduce the tax rates while increasing surveillance in order to increase the tax base and tax rate. Anyway, we were having this discussion going on in the middle of the night with this particular person, somebody very high up in the IMF. At some point, I had enough, and I said, "You want to raise?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Okay, 7 and 15%, with a surcharge of 3% if people insist on paying cash, in order to encourage plastic money because we catch tax evasion better. He said, "Do you mean this?" I said, "Yes." We shook hands. We even had a drink. It was very grateful to celebrate the agreement. I went back to Athens. I had to convince my cabinet of that, my prime minister. It wasn't easy because islanders would be up in arms because their exemptions would be done away with. I convinced them. I sent my team to Brussels. Brussels group, so to have them as part of the negotiations. I get a phone call from them saying, "What's this 7 and 15% you're telling us you had agreed with the IMF on? They insist on 13 and 23. Next time I was in Brussels, I came across this high-ranking person in the IMF. "What's this